Please don't send us back there. Mama will die, the sister whispered. The back office of the county courthouse smelled like old coffee and forgotten paperwork. Ruby gripped Pearl's hand so tight her knuckles turned white as Sheriff Hawkins shuffled through a stack of official documents, his weathered face showing no emotion. The fluorescent light above them flickered and buzzed like a dying insect. Please don't send us back there. Mama will die, Pearl whispered against Ruby's ear, her voice barely audible over the sheriff's droning explanation about state requirements and placement facilities. Hawkins didn't look up from his papers. Now, the state facility has adequate care for your mother's condition. 3 meals a day, supervised medication, trained staff. His pen scratched across a form. Course, there's the matter of your family property sitting empty too long. County's got concerns about that. Ruby's jaw tightened. No. The sheriff paused, finally meeting her eyes. Excuse me. I said no. There's got to be other options. Ruby, please. Pearl trembled beside her, but Ruby squeezed her hand tighter. What other options? Hawkins leaned back in his chair. You girls are minors. Your mother can't care for herself, let alone you two. Foster system's overloaded as it is. We'll take care of her ourselves. With what money? What experience? Hawkins set down his pen. Your mother talks to walls, Ruby. She hasn't recognized you girls in months. Pearl flinched, but Ruby's voice stayed steady. She has good days. Not enough of them. Hawkins tapped the papers. State facility are the best option for everyone involved. Your mother gets proper care, you girls get stable homes, and that property gets handled appropriately. Ruby stood abruptly, pulling Pearl toward the door. We're leaving. Girls. Hawkins' voice cut through the air like a blade, stopping them cold at the threshold. This ain't a request. The courthouse doors slammed behind them as Ruby and Pearl burst into harsh afternoon sunlight. Pearl's tears came freely now, her shoulders shaking as Ruby guided her down the concrete steps. What are we gonna do, Ruby? What are we gonna do? Pearl wiped her nose on her sleeve, voice breaking. Ruby's mind raced as she led Pearl toward their rusted pickup truck parked at the curb. The engine block was dented, the tailgate held together with wire, but it ran. We'll figure something out. But he said it ain't a request. He said. I heard what he said. Ruby fumbled for her keys, hands trembling despite her steady voice. Pearl grabbed her arm. Ruby, what if they make us go back to the property? What if they make Mama go back there? That ain't happening. But the well, Ruby. What happened to Grandmama at the well? Mama knows. That's why she talks to the walls. That's why she... Stop. Ruby's voice cracked. She could see her own fear reflected in Pearl's eyes now, and it scared her more than Sheriff Hawkins ever could. Pearl climbed into the passenger seat, still crying. I can't go back there. I won't. Ruby started the engine with shaking hands. The truck coughed to life, exhaust pipe rattling. As they pulled away from the courthouse, Ruby made a decision that surprised even her. We're not going to the foster home. What? We're gonna see Mama first. Before anyone can move her anywhere. Pearl's eyes widened. Ruby, no. She won't even know us. She hasn't known us in months. Ruby's grip tightened on the steering wheel as she turned toward the state facility on the outskirts of town. We're gonna remind her who she is. The building loomed ahead of them like a tomb against darkening clouds, its windows reflecting nothing but empty sky. The sterile hallways smelled like disinfectant and despair. Ruby and Pearl's footsteps echoed off polished floors as they followed signs to room 247. Catherine Bell sat by the window in a faded hospital gown, her once full frame now gaunt and hollow-eyed. She stared at nothing, fingers picking at the fabric of her sleeves. Ruby approached slowly and knelt beside her mother's chair. Mama? It's us. It's Ruby and Pearl. Catherine's eyes remained fixed on the window. The voices in the walls won't stop talking. They whisper about Papa's promises. Mama, look at me. Ruby touched her mother's hand gently. Pearl hung back near the doorway, afraid to come closer. Catherine's head turned slightly, as if hearing a sound only she could detect. Papa said the family would always provide. Said we had obligations. Catherine's voice was distant, broken. But the darkness keeps calling. Mama, Sheriff Hawkins wants to move you back to the family property. Catherine's eyes snapped to Ruby's face with sudden, terrifying clarity. Her skeletal fingers grabbed Ruby's wrist like a vice. Not the house. Never the house. Visiting hours are over. A nurse appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. Catherine's grip tightened until Ruby winced. You don't understand. What lives in the deep won't let us go. It never lets us go. Ma'am, you need to release your daughter. The nurse stepped forward. The darkness down there, it's hungry. Always hungry. Catherine's voice rose to a shriek. It took Papa. It took Mama. It wants us all. I need security in room 247. The nurse reached for her radio as Catherine began screaming. 2 orderlies rushed in, restraining Catherine as she fought against them. Ruby and Pearl were escorted toward the exit, Catherine's voice echoing down the hallway behind them. Don't let them take me back. Don't let them take me back. Pearl held it together until they were 2 miles from the state facility. Then the sobs came in waves that shook her entire body. Ruby pulled the truck over on a dusty side road and wrapped her arms around her sister as Pearl collapsed against her shoulder. I can't forget, Ruby. I can't forget any of it. Pearl's words came between gasps for air. What can't you forget? The sounds at night. The way Papa just vanished one morning. No goodbye, no note, nothing. Pearl wiped her face with trembling hands. And Grandmama at the bottom of the well. Ruby's stomach dropped. Pearl, you don't have to. I found her, Ruby. I was the one who found her down there. Pearl's voice broke completely. Her eyes were open, staring up at nothing. And Mama screamed for 3 days straight after that. Wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, just screamed. Ruby held her sister tighter, remembering how child services had arrived like vultures after Grandmama's funeral. That's when they took us away. But I heard them talking, the social workers. They didn't think I was listening, but I was. Pearl pulled back to look at Ruby. They talked about mineral rights. Development opportunities. Said the property was worth more than anyone knew. Ruby's hands tightened on the steering wheel. What else did they say? That Sheriff Hawkins had been asking questions about our family for years. About when we'd be old enough to sign papers. Pearl's eyes were red but fierce now. Ruby, this isn't about Mama's condition. This is about money. And they're willing to let her die for it. Or make her die for it. Pearl's voice dropped to a whisper. What if they send her back to the property? What if whatever got Papa and Grandmama is still down there waiting? Ruby stared out at the empty road ahead, jaw set with determination. We're not letting them kill her for money. Ruby turned the truck toward the old family property as sunset painted the sky blood red. Pearl grabbed the dashboard, panic rising in her voice. Ruby, no. We can't go back there. I need to see what they're really after. Please. Ruby, please don't make me go back there. Ruby's jaw was set. You can stay in the truck. The house stood partially collapsed when they arrived, overtaken by kudzu and decay. Windows gaped like dead eyes, the front porch sagged under the weight of rotting wood. In the backyard, the well sat uncapped, a dark mouth in the earth that seemed to swallow the dying light. Pearl pressed herself against the passenger door. I'm not getting out. Ruby stepped onto the property alone, her boots crunching on dead leaves. Fresh surveyor stakes dotted the land like tiny graves, bright orange flags fluttering in the evening breeze. Tire tracks cut deep ruts in the dirt, too recent to be from their last visit years ago. Inside the ruined house, Old family photographs lay scattered across the warped floorboards. Her grandmother's face stared up from a dozen different images, alongside their father and generations of Bell family members Ruby had never known. She found the loose board behind the kitchen counter by accident, her grandmother's journal hidden in the space beneath. The pages were filled with desperate handwriting. Warnings about old agreements made in blood. References to what sleeps below and must never be awakened. Ruby's hands trembled as she read about contracts that bound the family to something ancient and hungry. Pearl's screams from the truck shattered the silence. Ruby rushed outside, journal clutched against her chest, and froze at what she saw. A figure in a dark coat stood beside the well. Sheriff Hawkins, but something was wrong with his presence. The air around him seemed thicker, charged with malevolent energy. When he spoke, his voice carried unnaturally across the yard, as if the very ground beneath their feet amplified his words. "Ruby Bell. You came back after all." Ruby stepped slowly toward the sheriff, her grandmother's journal pressed against her chest. Pearl remained frozen in the truck, her face pale in the dashboard light. "I've been waiting for you girls to come back." Hawkins circled the well like a predator, his movements too fluid for a man his age. "Your family has obligations, Ruby. Debts that go back generations." "What kind of debts?" "The kind signed in blood. The kind that bind a family to something greater than themselves." His eyes reflected the dying light strangely. "Your grandmother tried to break the old agreements. Thought she was clever, hiding her research, writing down her little plans." Ruby's grip tightened on the journal. "She died in this well. Her death satisfied the debt temporarily. But temporary ain't forever." Hawkins stopped circling, his gaze fixed on Ruby. "Your father understood that. Understood his place in the order of things. Papa didn't abandon us. You took him. He went willingly when his time came. Just like your grandmother did in the end." Hawkins smiled, and the expression looked wrong on his face. "Your mother's condition isn't an illness, Ruby. It's awareness. She knows what's coming for your family." Ruby began backing toward the truck, but Hawkins moved with inhuman speed, blocking her path before she could take 3 steps. "I need Catherine back on this property to complete what began decades ago. The contract requires it." "Ruby!" Pearl's voice cut through the tension as she appeared beside her sister, no longer trembling but standing tall. In her hands was their grandmother's journal. "Pearl, get back in the truck." "She wrote down everything," Pearl said quietly, her eyes never leaving Hawkins. "Including how to break it." For the first time, the sheriff's confident demeanor cracked. His inhuman composure slipped as Pearl opened the journal to the final pages. That old woman didn't know what she was dealing with. Yes, she did. Pearl's voice grew stronger as she began reading aloud from their grandmother's desperate handwriting, the words carrying power that made the very air around the well seem to shiver. Pearl's voice grew stronger as she read from their grandmother's desperate handwriting. "The curse feeds on blood and binding. What was made with flesh can be unmade with flesh. The guardian serves not the law but the hunger below." The darkness around the well seemed to respond to her words, shifting and writhing like something alive. Shadows moved against the natural flow of twilight, reaching toward the sisters with grasping tendrils. Hawkins dropped his pretense entirely. His weathered face remained the same, but something ancient and hungry stared out through his eyes. "Enough. The sheriff is not a man but a vessel. The thing that sleeps below chooses its servants carefully." Pearl continued reading, her voice carrying power that made the air vibrate. "You have a choice, Ruby Bell." Hawkins' voice no longer sounded human. "Surrender your mother to complete the family's obligation, or watch your sister suffer the same fate as your grandmother." Ruby stepped protectively in front of Pearl, but her sister never stopped reading. "It can be broken. The curse can be sent back to its source, but only through willing sacrifice from the bloodline." "Pearl, stop. The well must be fed, but it can be fed the curse itself. One life freely given can break what generations could not." Pearl's voice rose as she reached the final passage. Hawkins lunged forward with inhuman speed, but Ruby met him halfway. The struggle was brief but brutal. His hands were like ice, his strength beyond anything natural. They grappled at the well's edge, loose stones crumbling beneath their feet. "Ruby!" Pearl screamed as both figures teetered on the crumbling stone rim. Ruby's eyes found her sister's face, and despite everything, they were calm. "Take care of Mama." "No. Ruby, don't. She can be free now. You can both be free." Ruby looked into Hawkins' ancient eyes one last time. "The debt ends with me." She released her grip on the sheriff's coat and let herself fall backward into darkness. Hawkins, caught off balance, tumbled after her. Their voices echoed off the stone walls until silence swallowed everything. Pearl collapsed at the well's edge, tears streaming down her face, but the oppressive weight that had haunted their family for generations was already beginning to lift. Ruby and Hawkins fell into darkness together, their voices echoing off stone walls until silence consumed everything. Pearl collapsed beside the well, clutching her grandmother's journal, but the oppressive presence that had haunted their family for generations began to lift like fog at sunrise. Days later, Pearl sat beside Catherine in a clean, bright room. Not the state facility, but a private care home paid for by mineral rights money that now legally belonged to the sisters. Catherine's eyes were clear for the first time in years, the hollow look replaced by recognition and love. "You remember me." Pearl's voice was soft, still fragile from grief. "I remember everything now. The curse, the sacrifice, what Ruby chose to do." Catherine reached for her daughter's hand. "She saved us all, baby girl." Pearl opened the journal to the final page, where her grandmother's handwriting spoke of love being stronger than any darkness. Grandmama knew. She knew Ruby would be the one to break it. Catherine pulled Pearl close, and they held each other as tears fell freely. Pearl whispered the words Ruby always said when times got hard. "Family protects family. Always." Catherine kissed Pearl's forehead. Outside the window, Pearl could see the family property in the distance. The house was gone now, demolished and cleared away. The well had been filled with concrete, and wildflowers grew where the darkness used to reach. Yellow blooms swayed in the gentle breeze, bright against the green grass. "She's still with us, baby girl." Catherine's voice was steady and sure. "She's in everything good we do now." Pearl nodded, watching the wildflowers dance in the sunlight, and for the first time since that terrible night, she smiled.